Hola, Wine and Chisme familia. We've got some exciting news to share. The Wine and Chisme now has a voicemail line. That's right, you can literally call us, leave your thoughts, questions, or even suggest topics you want us to dive into on future episodes. Whether you want to share how an episode resonated with you, or ask about previous wines we've featured, or even tell us about your own chisme, we want to hear your voice. Porque este podcast has always been about connection, and now we can make that connection even more real. So grab your phone and call us at 858-304-0266. Leave us a message, tell us your name, where you're calling from, and whatever's on your heart. Who knows? Your voice might be featured on an upcoming episode. Because at the end of the day, Wine and Chisme is about all of us coming together, sharing our stories, and celebrating our community. Now, be a part of the podcast in a whole new way. Again, that number is 858-304-0266. We want to hear from you. Hola, hola, mi gente. Welcome to another episode of the Wine and Chisme podcast. Mi gente, ahora mismo es más importante to speak on what is happening. We know this. And the fact that today's guest is a political scientist, a paralegal. We're going to get into what is happening and what we can do, not only for ourselves, but for our community. So help me welcome Desiree Collado. How are you, Desiree?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I really am. I wanted to find a place to do exactly what you said and reach out to people and let people know first where this comes from, right? This is not from now, and how, we see and speaking of what's happening now with children and how these things start in early childhood, these political ideologies or lack thereof or identity starts in early childhood, and how that affects our politics and how we see and the perspective that we have now as adults, but also how we can change those perspectives, right? Moving forward and, plan, not panic
Yeah.
in any type of political scenario that we're in as Latinos, right?
Yeah. No, the fact, like when you were saying right before I hit record, when you're saying I plan, not panic, I was like, ooh, you got to save that. We got to talk about that. So I'm gonna read your bio, and then if you are drinking anything, let us know what you're drinking. I'll share it out, and then we'll get into the chisme. So, Desiree
All
is a
right.
Dominican American political scientist and paralegal with over 30 years of experience. She is a passionate mother, advocate, and champion of justice. Grounded in family, history, and empathy, she is dedicated to preserving Latina narratives and advancing the understanding of the Latina plight. So, otra vez, welcome. I'm so happy to have you because, like I said, with everything that is happening right now, these conversations are more important than ever because I feel like we're just in this crux. But before we get into that, are you drinking water, cafe, wine? What you got going on
No,
today?
I'm not drinking anything because I'm also like doing this and also like side-eyeing my child at the time. But my brand newborn baby who I'm in love with. So if you hear anything, just know that she's just drinking her milk. So
Oh,
she's drinking for the both of us.
oh,
She's
there you
drinking her
go.
milk for the both of us.
Hey, you know what? That's life though, right? That's why when people are like, "Oh, if my kids come in," I'm like, "Don't worry about it because that's life." And I think that's the beautiful thing. I don't ever like to over edit stuff because I think it's important that we recognize that I'm not in a studio, you're not in a studio. We're,
No,
recording remotely. I'm in my living room. And so I think it's really important to share, like, we can share our conversations regardless of those circumstances. We don't
hmm
have to be, would I one day love to be in a studio? Yeah, absolutely. But it's not necessary and it's not needed. What is needed is the
no,
space to be able to hold these conversations.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I am
Um,
drinking before we get into that. I had my over the holidays, my husband had made some Vinchot, which is like a French mulled wine,
mm,
and I it's been in the fridge. So this is the last of it. And I was like, you know what? It's not New York weather. It's not that cold. But for us wimpy San Diegans, it is cold. It's like in the upper 50s, low 60s. And that's cold enough to have the wind show. So, salud,
yes,
mujer,
salud, salud.
and salud to your baby. So, I want to get things just
Thank you.
started and everything in regards to how, because obviously how we grow up affects our viewpoints and everything. So obviously you're Dominican American, you're in New York. Like I would love to hear about how you grew up, because one thing I love about New York is you grow up with so many different cultures. I grew up in San Diego, so yes, we did have different cultures, but it was mostly like my fellow Latinos, we had Asian, like I had a lot of Filipino and Vietnamese friends, and then white friends. But you don't get, I feel like this in depth, like cultural appreciation like you do in New York. So please share, like, what part of New York did you grow up in, and the people that you surrounded yourself with and the things that you saw on a day to day from your perspective growing up in the area.
So I had a very different, not different, because there's a lot of kids like me where we were raised in the United States, but we were also raised in the Dominican Republic. So I was born in the United States in New York City, born and raised in Washington Heights, which is a heavily Dominican area. So
Love
much
that
so that
area.
a few years back, Google on its own decided to name Washington Heights Little DR in their Google Maps, and it was a whole big thing for us Dominicans. You were like, "Oh my God, did you notice that Google did that?" Um, but because in Washington Heights in the 80s, there was a very, the pollution was horrible. I'm an asthmatic. Got to the point where my asthma was not good for the weather. My asthma was triggered by where I was living. So my mom had to make the difficult decision to move me to Dominican Republic, and I was raised with my grandmother for about a year and a half. Um, and then I returned back to the United States. And that transition is where I feel I, at 9 years old, um, back then it was like, wow, why did I have to grow up that fast? But now it's like, wow, I'm so glad that I did, as far as forming my identity. Because in Dominican Republic was the first time that I was made to feel not Dominican.
Really?
My own people, my and children could be harsh. They used to call us Dominican Yorks. And it so happened that back in the day, children that were not behaving here or were falling into bad crowds, the parents would send them to DR because in Dominican Republic, there's more of a conservative upbringing. Tú no le vas a tratar a los padres tuyos, los maestros te pueden dar para disciplinarte, you know. So it's like, let's send the bad kids back to DR so that they can, know what it is not to have so much freedom. So under that stigma, I was sent to Dominican Republic not being one of those kids. It was literally for health reasons. But then when you get over there, and I had a crash course in the Spanish alphabet because it's way different than the English alphabet. We have ñ, we have double L, we have double R. You know, my uncle, may he rest in peace, um, did a two-way thing because my cousin also came from Dominican Republic here, so he would put postcards in cabinets. So in English, it would say cabinet, and in Spanish, it would say gabinete for me, and it would say cabinet for her. So he gave us a crash course. He was an educator. He was an educator for paraplegic kids. So he was a huge influence in my life. And because of him, when I was thrown to Dominican Republic, and I say thrown because, it's a generational thing. Now we talk to our kids, hey, we're going to move you here. We're going to explain this to you.
Yeah.
It was literally one day I'm here, and the next day I was like, palm trees? Like, where am I? There was no discussion. It was survival of the fittest. My mom is working 2 jobs. I need the kid to survive. She's not surviving in America. Dominican Republic, you need a natural heated habitat. I never got an asthma attack in the Dominican Republic. Long story short, you go to school over there, and I'm never gonna forget my first experience. It was the first day of school. Me and my broken Spanish. I was a Yo no Sabo kid in Dominican Republic, being called Dominican York. Less Dominican. You're not Dominican. By the way, for your viewers, just so they know, if you are Dominican American, you are as Dominican as someone that is born in the Dominican Republic because the Constitution of Dominican Republic states so. As long as you are a child of one parent that is Dominican, you are as Dominican as anyone that's born in the Dominican Republic. Just for future reference. I didn't know that. So over there, learning how to speak Spanish fluently as I went along. They asked me a question in Spanish. It would think it was math, like 2 times 2. So you translate in your head, and you're like, dos más dos. And us American kids have a tendency of going, to Dominican Republic children, it's like, is she slow? What is like, because, and you have to do that in every sentence because you're switching gears.
Right.
So not only are you Dominican American, you're slow. That's the kind of bullying that I faced over there by children that didn't know any better. But then I started being a New Yorker. I started fighting back. I was like, profesora, enséñame en la pizarra o en el mapa dónde está Dominican York, porque eso no es un país. You know. And I got into a few fights because I'm a New Yorker. So then after, by the end of that school year, trust me, everybody knew that I was Dominican and everybody knew she was also American,
Right.
because there was no decorum to the Spanish little girl that had to defend herself and who didn't have her mom around. So when I see these kids, because I told you I'm just gave birth to my child, Liam, 5 years old, being stripped away from his parents, it's triggering to me because I go back to that childhood where even though I had my grandmother, I didn't have my mom. And I'm in a foreign country that tells me I'm less than, right? So at that point, I was like, no, I am Dominican. You don't tell me what I'm going to be.
Yeah.
At that age, I had to decide whether I was going to be American or Dominican, and I chose Dominican because that's all I knew. I ate Dominican food, I danced Dominican music, you know. I went to American schools, but in America, I was Dominican. I wasn't American,
Right.
even if I was born here. And my uncle always instilled me because I come from a very political family. You're only as American as this country will ever allow you to be. So now,
Oh, that's so
when
good.
the so now where we have a lot of assimilated people that we're told to dress white, we're told to speak white, we're told to enunciate, we're told. I come from a paralegal background. Red lips and hoops, I do that. Let somebody tell me I can't do that. I don't
Girl,
care if
I
you
got
have green hair. I
I
don't
feel
care.
naked without my hoops.
My hoops. So you're told to strip away your identity in order to be successful in this country. But even when you strip away your identity to become successful, and that success is contingent on a lot of things,
Yeah,
you know.
definitely subjective,
But
right?
that's what my generation. I am 44 years old, so that was what my generation was being molded to believe. We didn't have a Bad Bunny back then. God bless his soul. So when I came back from Dominican Republic, I was bullied again because I was put into these what they call here ESL buses, English as a second language. Mind you, I just had to learn Spanish, and now they're telling me that English is my second language. And my mom didn't know any better. My mom was like, whatever, and they put me in those
Whatever they
buses
think,
only
because
because
our parents are of the mindset of they know best, right? Like
oh, they're
everybody, like,
working. They don't know.
yeah,
My mother to this day doesn't know how to speak English. My mother waited to take the citizenship exam in Spanish because she said that she wasn't going to lose her language. So this is the political background that I have, right?
uh-huh.
And you form this identity inadvertently. It's not like I decided. Yeah, I decided to be Dominican, but then I come back and I'm being put in English as a second language class or buses. My mother doesn't know any better. My mother's working 2 jobs. My mom is saying the teacher says that she needs help. Let her get the help. And then I find out that the only reason I got put into those classes is because I did not know how to say didn't. So prepositional phrases are phrases that allow your English to flow. So because I spoke very broken up, I did not do that. I didn't do that. Because of that, I was put into English as second language. And now here come my classmates. They don't explain to these kids, this person came from Dominican Republic. She needs help transitioning. The kids here think you're slow because you're being put on a bus, not a yellow bus, but a bus.
Yeah. Oh my
Here's
gosh.
here's the great thing though.
Okay. I'm ready. I'm just
That
like, oh my gosh, listening to every word.
the educational system in the Dominican Republic has always been more advanced than the American educational system. American United States educational system, like things like 53 in the world. So even though I didn't understand why I was being put in English as a second language, when I came back, my math skills were more advanced, my reading levels were more advanced. It was just the way of how I sounded. So much so that by the time I got to eighth grade in Catholic schools, because my mother did everything to keep me in Catholic schools, I was at math nine, which is high school math. Then here comes high school, where they tell you, do you want to learn French? Because, how dare you, advance in your own language? Or do you want to take Spanish? And I was like, no, I'm taking Spanish. One, I did easy A, or so I thought.
I was
But
about to
then
say,
I
you
discovered,
think?
and then you find out, oh my goodness, Spanish authors exist? There's actually Spanish authors. There's not just the Hemingways and the Shakespeares. There's Federico Garcia Lorca. There's Gabriel Marquez. There's Unamuno. What? Mind blowing. And then when you learn how to read in Spanish, I'm sorry, the Bronte sisters and the Jane Austen sound bland because everything is more powerful in Spanish. Jódete. Vete a la verga. Sounds more powerful than then, oh, go whatever yourself. It's like, it's more passionate. You don't never go back. And I would read the Brontes and I'll be like, okay. But then I would read Bodas de Sangre and it's like, oh my God, this is real drama. It's like, and not to, diminish because I love a Hemingway poem and, but on Neruda, you know. So you grow up with this identity. And like Julia Alvarez says, shout out to Julia Alvarez, you live on the hyphen. So you live on, I'm not good enough here and I'm not good enough there. So I have to determine where I'm good at.
Yeah.
I can't leave it up to my geography to determine my identity.
Ah,
And now you see this conflict really manifesting itself. Shout out to the orange agent because we got to thank him for two things. We got to thank him for lifting the veil of ambiguity of being a racist country and the veil of ambiguity regarding identity of Latinos and the power that we have. Because the Latino vote was what got Obama into office twice, and the Latino vote, unfortunately, got Trump into power twice. But here's the thing: because of this identity crisis, is that Trump won.
this is it's so true. And I want to share a little bit so you know a little bit about me. And because I think I really identify with a lot of some of the things I do identify, some of the things I don't. I'm second gen, right? I'm second gen. Both my parents were born in the US. And um they were of that generation where they would get in trouble for speaking Spanish in school. So when my mom had me and then when they had my sisters, it was about English first in the household, right? English first, because they never wanted to have the, they didn't want me and my sisters to have the experience that they had. But I'm also 5 and 7 years older than my sisters. So I got more, like, although Spanish is not my first language, English is my first language.
Uh-huh.
My Spanish is okay. It could obviously be better, and I'm always trying to make it better. But my sisters really don't know any Spanish. They know very few because like the things that my mom would say would always have to do with cleaning and cooking, like the household stuff. And then my friends were always people of the global majority, people of communities of color. Those were always my closest friends. I always seemed to relate to them, whether they were, like I said, Filipino, Vietnamese, other Latinos, Mexicans, Guatemala, like, whatever.
The
And
struggle is a language on its own.
yeah,
And people of color, we all have one thing that unifies us: is struggle
yeah.
to succeed, and struggle to make a name for ourselves in this country.
And because of my, so it always felt like a lot, because a lot of my friends, especially my closest friends, were Latinos, and a lot of them would go to like Mexico for the summer. And most of my family is here now. Like and so I would always be jealous that they would be able to go to Mexico for the summer and spend, summers with their cousins and their tios and tias. And not that I didn't, but it was always here in California in home. But it was one of those things where I struggled, because I would see what my friends would have, and then I would see that they would get to go to Mexico and everything, and I would see, and I know that there's struggle that I didn't see. I just saw the things that as a kid you're like, that's so cool, I want to do that too.
Mango
And
trees? Yeah, I want to be where the mango trees are.
yeah.
Like,
And so um it was one of those things where, because like because I'm a light skinned Latina as well, but my last name is very Latino. So I felt like people never knew what to do with me. And then they would hear, like, I talk and I speak English well, but I also speak with like a little bit of an accent. But I think that's like the Cali Mex accent, right?
mhm.
Um, but my sisters don't speak with that. Like, I will say things that they're like, when I say sandwich, right? They would make fun of me for saying sandwich. They would, I I had a speech impediment where I couldn't say my R's, but then I overcorrected and say three and through and like stuff like that. And then
Mhm.
I would get made fun of for that. Or so it was always like, when it was always, and I have a big personality, and so it's always like I was never enough and too much all at the same time, which I think is
I
something
can
that
relate
so
a hundred
many of
percent.
us feel, right? And when the Selena movie came out, I know all of us led a collective like, yes, when when Edward James Olmos was like, you go to Mexico and you're not Mexican, but when you're here, you're too, like, it was like, and that's how so many of us felt. And that's where I can relate to you in regards to like going to Mexico. They wouldn't probably consider me, I'm not born there, I'm born in California, but I'm very proud of my roots and where my family came
And you
from and
should be.
everything.
And I
And
think the Latinos in our native countries don't leave room for that, and that's a mistake. Because if you were to go back into this constitution, I'm sure in the Mexican constitution, you're as Mexican as the person that lives over there. You know what I mean? Like, I had to I had to figure that out eventually, because until I figured that out, I was like, am I not Dominican? Even my own family. No, tú eres americana porque tú naciste aquí. And I'm like, no, yo soy dominicana, because when I go somewhere, my last name is Collado Hierro. You know what I mean? And funny enough, when I was pregnant, a lot of people were asking me, what you gonna name your child? What you gonna name your child? And I'm like, she's gonna be a Latina baby. I have a friend of mine that named her daughter a very white name, because her father's black, so she has a black last name. So there's masking that can be done. And I said to my friend, there's no masking. Regardless if it's a boy or girl, that Latino last name is gonna give her away. And
yeah.
another thing is, I'm not gonna enable masking. I'm not gonna enable masking, because we fought in every war in this country.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I'm not gonna enable that masking, because at the end of the day, you don't tell our soldiers to mask when you pick Latinos first to go fight your wars. You don't tell us to mask when we're picking your fruit. You don't tell us to mask for anything else that's convenient for you.
Well,
So we don't have
when
so
you
we don't
talk
so we don't
about
have to
that,
mask.
yeah, when you're talking about like service members and everything, where do they go recruit first? They go to the lower income high schools and stuff to recruit, because um they have, to, and they wait, they dangle. And look, I appreciate, I have a lot of family members who are service members. My sister was in Afghanistan, my cousins, like friends, like I grew up in San Diego. We are a military town. So I understand that. I appreciate anybody who serves for our rights
Right.
and our freedoms. However, at the same time, when you're looking at the structural like recruitment and everything like that, they go to low income, high um you know places that have high black and brown communities because they oftentimes have more of a struggle in regards to not necessarily qualifying for college, but for paying for college, paying for higher
And there's a
university.
lot of and um there's a lot of bait and switch. Come, die for your country, or come and enlist, and in a few years your family can be naturalized, or come and fight for our country, and you have free college, or whatever. And then when they go fight these wars and they come back, they're not giving them $1 billion like the way they're giving ICE. They're not giving them $1 billion the way they gave to Argentina. They're giving them scraps.
Yeah. I want to go back
You know,
to
sorry,
uh,
I know I get
no, I
very passionate.
appreciate it. I know I appreciate it. I just, it's so important that we have there's like days where I'm screaming at myself. Like I am like, I can't believe this is happening. And then sometimes I record it. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I have to calm myself because I don't want to
Mhm.
be just this angry person on social media because um of everything that's happening. But I know, and I talk to so many people, not just within the podcast, but on a daily. I work for a nonprofit that we partner with schools. So I talk to teachers. I see this every day and have
And as
these
a woman,
different
anger,
emotions every day, right?
as a woman, I'm telling you, as a political scientist and as someone that has worked with the United Nations, and I've been around so many different circles as far as anger, right? Anger is a love language, but people don't see it that way when it comes to politics. But if you don't get angry about something, there's no passion behind it. Now, as a female in any country, in any culture, the minute we get angry, people shut down. So kudos to you for not being that, you know. But it also teaches us that we have to find a way to express our anger. Alicia Ocaso Marquez Cortez was being called a bitch in the Capitol Hill. She did not break character because she could not. She doesn't have the space. She cannot do that because then she's everything
That
they
they
want
say.
to make her out to be.
Um, yeah,
So that's a good
I
thing. I just
totally
wanted to let you
agree.
know that that's a good thing. But I know that all of us, especially females, because our rights are under question right now, whether we're Latinas or not, we have a lot of anger. We don't know how to express it because we get pigeonholed into a certain way. Which one of the reasons I'm talking to you on your podcast is because there aren't many spaces where I can speak where people are going to be like, "Oh, no, 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 I'm already stressed. I already feel anxious. I don't want to talk about it." But if we don't have these conversations, if we don't have them over and over again, what was the main strategic thing that the GOP used? The main strategic asset that they used? They kept repeating the same thing over
Over
and
and
over
over
and
and
over
over.
and over again. So why can't we implement that? Why can't I say FUCK ICE over and
Oh,
over
girl,
and
you can say
over
it
and
here.
over
You
again?
don't like you are not censored
You
to say
know,
that here because I've
you
said
know
it
what I mean? Like,
myself.
and to me, it's we have to keep having these conversations over and over and over again because that's the way they stay viral. That's the way they drive the message across. And if we go silent because of panic and fear, then we're pretty much giving up and letting them take over
Yeah.
and implement whatever they want. The problem here is that we're a generation that we've been spoiled. We've been spoiled because our parents lived in these countries that did exhibit that. but we didn't. And I want to say this because this is where we are as far as we're privileged. Our generation and the generation before us, even, never really had to think about international politics. Never really had to think about how international politics was going to affect our day-to-day lives. Um, to the point where high schoolers are learning about international politics now and how these relations affect us because they're the reason why their mom now has two jobs when she only had one because of tariffs and all this other stuff. Um, the other reason why we're all preparing for the inevitable, right? Um, and it's imperative to do two things. Identify yourself. Where do I stand? How far am I willing to go? This is part of the planning and the preparing instead of panicking. I'll take myself, for example. I have a child. It's not, to me, this is where I say that planning can be somewhat, you can be somewhat an alarmist, but it happens. Like, for example, before he got into power, I said, doesn't matter if you're going to be a citizen or not. My friends can attest to this because little by little, they've all come back to me and apologized and said, sorry if we thought that you were being an alarmist. But when you study politics as a political scientist, you study it like you see the stocks going up and down. You kind of get to see where the needle is going and you can plan in that analysis. Some people are not ready to hear that information because it can be like, no, you're panicking, you're taking it too far. And then some people are like, really? I don't know. I'm going to give you two examples. The first one was because in Dominican Republic, we had a situation where a few years back, um, the Congress in Dominican Republic and the leaders of Dominican Republic wanted to fix the Constitution, fix it, or amend the Constitution retroactively to 1790 or something like that, where Haitians were illegal to enter Dominican Republic. That means retroactively, anybody before not born in 1790 and after is illegal, even though they're not because they became citizens. That never went through in Dominican Republic because the United Nations held some sanctions. The Dominicans, lo que dicen ahora, el dominicano en el exterior o el dominicano en la diáspora, which is us, um, was like, oh, you want to do that? Fine, we'll stop sending envíos to DR. We'll stop sending money to our parents to spend over there. We'll stop touristing over there. We'll stop putting so much money. And Dominicans in the diaspora is a big chunk of money that Dominican Republic runs on. So that's why it never went through. When I saw that back then, I said, if that can happen in Dominican Republic, then that can happen in the United States, going back to what my uncle said. You're only as American as this country will ever allow you to be. Excuse me. So when this guy got in power the second time, because Latinos tend to believe in white saviorship because of their colonization and indoctrination, I said, oh man, he's not going to care if you're a citizen or not. And I said, but you know what? It would only go crazy. It would only get to a point of trying to undo it if there's a white citizen that's not considered a citizen anymore. Long and behold, white citizens have been deported, have been killed, and here we are. And birthright citizenship is on the table to be taken away. So that's the one thing that happened. The second thing that happened, I said, this guy got elected regardless of being a rapist, and this guy got elected regardless of being a child molester. So these Epstein files are not going to really matter unless if they're covering something that's worse. What's worse than child rape and treason? Because he's been accepting gifts from Qatar and all these places. So all the presidents in this country have had blood on their hands, but none of them have committed treason that we know of. He's committed treason because we have the Deutsche Bank receipts, thanks to our Attorney General, Miss Letitia James. Shout out to her. And we have proof that he's a child molester and that he's a rapist. So if he hasn't been impeached, haven't brought articles of impeachment and these things, what do the Epstein files have? And I said in my Washington Heights analysis, I call it Washington Heights because we call it here murder. He caught a body. He has to have a body caught, or somebody had to die in the
This is
process
what you're thinking in your head of what your opinion has
of
led you to, what you think
in
it.
December of last year. I expressed it to two people, and they're my witness. Long and behold, it recently came out in one of the hearings that there was a child that tried to escape, and they eventually killed because they couldn't have loose
Wait,
ends.
from the Epstein files?
Yes,
Oh, I missed that. I have
yes.
not heard, I
I'll
have,
send you
yeah,
the
send it over
this
because
is
I have not heard that.
so they because you've been hearing about everything else because they're distracting from
Oh
everything
yeah,
else. So
it's
yes,
everything. It's
so
they.
it's now creeping out into the world that um there's probably more than one multiple deaths, whether it's tied down to the person in charge now or not. But think about it. All these kids, not one tried to escape. Not one they did very horrible acts, and not one of them they took it too far with a child. And in the transcourse of abuse,
Yeah.
couldn't
And
have
let me
passed
just
away.
say that people might sit like, I don't think my audience will, but I've heard it from like Megan Kelly. These girls were 15. They're still children. They're children.
Correct.
They're 15,
They're
16. They
correct.
are still
The children.
children. They are not
Correct.
adults. They are
So
kids.
in either the trafficking of the transcourse of abuse or in multiple party situations, because there are many, power breeds corruption. You think that they were going to be satisfied with just one person to one person?
Mm-hmm.
So in the transcourse of this, you're telling me that no one died. They all got doctor checkups. They got all STD checkups. They had all these things in place for to secure the safety of these children that they were abusing. No, but and think about it. I was like, in my own personal life, I'm sitting here and I'm like, it has to be something worse than these three things. What's worse? What's something that could not be apologized? What's something that you can just not do away with? And it's murder. And now I want to say his last name, but I'm not sure about his last name. That's why I'm not saying it. He testified that yes, a loose end got away, and there was no longer a loose end. Whether that was redacted in the Epstein files, I don't know. We have to actually see it, but that it has been testified to in front of a hearing, yes. And I will
Okay.
get that information to
Yeah.
you.
Okay. So I want to kind of go back a little bit because I know
Yes, we're
people
right digressing. Yes, there's a
yeah,
lot
yeah,
of
yeah.
digressing in
Because
that
I
last.
know people are gonna be like, whoa, 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 whoa. First, I want you to share what your I know you said you mentioned you worked at the UN. I want you to share so people understand like where your perspective comes
So
from in regards to your qualifications, your education, just because I
sure,
don't want people going, I we
it's
got
somebody
this
else talking
and then
crap. Yeah,
had
yeah,
just ranting and raving. Like, please share
correct.
what your
So
qualifications and your are in regards to everything and
sure.
coming
So
to
I graduated with a political science degree in from Pace University. At Pace University, I was selected to work for Model UN, and I worked hand in hand with UN ambassadors to come in with resolutions for, let's say, clean water, resolutions for HIV, because in Africa it's not just your regular HIV strand, it's your HIV-1, HIV-2 strands. Um, and in conducting those resolutions along with UN ambassadors, some of them they actually took to the floor to the United Nations at these general assemblies, and some of them they didn't. But that's what a UN ambassador does. And then they're implemented. Unfortunately, the UN doesn't have the power that it used to have when I was in college. And those were my credentials lie as far as political analysis because I worked with people in politics. I've also, in my undergrad, have dealt with the senators of my community and the representatives like what's his name, Jackson, I forgot, Robert Jackson, Adriano Cespallat from our district is a very well known congressman. I have my issues with him, but this is where my political background comes from, as far as my analysis is concerned, because you're not just going by what you're seeing on national television. You're actually going like, okay, let me see what's appealing on TV. This is my process. Then I go into the pages. For example, in Dominican Republic, like I follow the congressmen and the bills that they're introducing that they're not introducing, like La Tres Causas de las Mujeres for women's rights. Then I look at the GDPs of the countries that I'm speaking about to see what the financial need. Because at the end of the day, you follow the money, you follow the scandal, you follow the need, you
Yes,
follow
follow the
everything. Um, and this is where my credentials lie. And I can't state something I don't know. So if I follow a hearing and it's being testified and I go online and I look at the transcript because I'm a paralegal, so I do have access to transcripts. I have access to every court system in the United States through e-law and through NICE. All paralegals know what I'm talking about. I have access to the Southern District of New York. I have access to the Eastern District. I have access to all these documents that are public record. The thing is, people think that you're making things up because they don't take the time to look at these public
right.
records. They don't
Yes.
have the time, but it's there. And I'm also, as a paralegal, I'm held liable for what comes out of my mouth. As far as I have to have proof of what I'm saying. It's not what you say, it's what you can prove, right? It's not what happened, it's what you can prove. So for the audience out there, there is tracking to everything that I'm saying. Should they want to look it up, and I'll send you the information before we make
Yeah,
this
that would
public
be
or whatever.
yeah, no, that would be awesome to include in the show notes in case somebody wants to like really dive into it because you're right. Like everything that happens we is snippets, right? Is snippets. We're not if you're not taking the time to look up the full transcript or the full hearing or the full whatever, we're just getting snippets. And we know in this day and age, people are going to choose the most salacious things to show because that's what gets views, that's what gets clicks. But
Or look at Project 2025. It was 900 and something pages,
oh my
950, I
gosh,
think.
didn't they just come
I
out? They,
only,
they
I
came out with
only,
they came out with the
I only
project
made it to page
2026
like,
too now, right?
yeah, I only got to like page 300. I just couldn't.
I mean,
I'm
they
not
and
gonna sit
it's
here and say
oh,
I
they
read all the
overwhelm
president.
you with information, so you can't get through it. That's what's happening with bills, right? And when you're talking about budgetary things, like they used to pass one thing at a time, and now they smush it all together, and so it's not just passing one bill; it's like all or nothing. And
Yep,
I that's something that's always
which
I've
makes it
worked
hard for
local
our, which
politics,
which makes it
so
hard for our representatives
yeah.
to do their job. So when people say, "Oh, this person did this and this person didn't do that," no, this person had to choose the lesser evil, unfortunately. Now, there are lesser evils that don't matter, and then there's lesser evils that do matter. That you can't make that decision. But what I wanted to really, I'm going to circle back to, because we're digressing. What I really wanted to focus on is, as Latinos, we don't know the power that we have. And I want to emphasize again that our power brought this man into power. Our voting power brought this man into power. Our lack of identity, because of how we've been trained not to have an identity, is what allows us to fall into a trap of believing everything we hear and not going by what we see, right?
Mhm.
So when not panicking and in planning, I want to take this opportunity to inform the Latino communities, especially those that voted for Trump. Please come to terms with the fact that it's beautiful and enriching and powerful to be a Latino. They destroyed our history so that we couldn't see it and couldn't read it. They destroyed the fact that they never kept records of the fact that we fought in every American war, down to the American Revolution. Um, They steal all these things and they put them away to make us feel less than, so that we can then buy into this delusion of grandeur that America at any given point was great. America at every given point was doing what America can do to get the best things in line for America, whether that was slavery, whether that was civil rights. It always has to have a benefit for America, right? On the heels of that, it is important to know this because you need to start working from a mentality of, I need to do what's best for my community, for what's best for me, because America will always save itself, but America will not always save me, even if I'm the one allowing America to run. My work, my taxes, all of that can be driven away from the mentality of, we don't want to let them know that they're great. We don't want to let them know that they have power. We don't want to let them, but it's in the pudding. Look at what you did. You voted Obama into office twice, Latinos. Look what you did. You voted this man in. Without the Latino vote, this man could have not become president. And you're telling me that as Latinos, we cannot stand up, we cannot retake our identity. And I'm gonna leave you with this, and I don't know, but I want to implement this because this is one of the taglines that I want people to know. They didn't rob the poor. They didn't colonize the poor. They didn't go and conquer the poor countries. They colonized, captured the colonies, the countries that were rich in agriculture, rich in systems like the Aztecs, rich in tobacco, sugar, cane, everything we had, everything. We have everything. We have oil. Look at Venezuela. Like we can literally run the world if we wouldn't be so egocentric. Most Latino leaders are egocentric. It comes with us being passionate people. But there was a time, I believe in the early 90s or mid 2000s, I'm not sure, where there was an idea called Mercosur. Mercosur was like the Euro, where all the nine American countries were going to form together. This is also Simon Bolivar's dream, right? Um, RIP to the great one. Simon Bolivar, in that America unified cannot be taken down because we had everything we need from each other. Argentina has beef and wine. Venezuela has oil. All the Latino Caribbean countries have coffee, sugar, tobacco, plátanos. We have everything to be one nation like the European Union. And we haven't done that. That's Simon Bolivar's dream. That's an idealistic dream. So think about it. What did they have in their countries that they didn't have to go out and go conquer other people?
Yeah.
They didn't go colonize and with their
For
missionaries.
nothing. You're right. They wouldn't go. Why are you going to go invade a country that has nothing to give you?
They came and they robbed the rich. But the history, the filtered news, the filtered history books, they all tell you the same thing, that we needed them, that we are less than, that we have to work hard to be Americans, that we have to drop our accents, that we have to assimilate because we're less than, because America is this great, beautiful thing. But America falls beneath the educational system of Cuba, which is a communist country. America went to Venezuela and literally, with the help of Dominican Republic, that's a whole different storyline. I'm so upset about that. And robbed Venezuela. And people, and I'm gonna say this because I don't want your audience to get the wrong impression. I'm anti Maduro and I'm also anti the United States going into Venezuela.
Yeah, two things
Two
can
things
be
can be true
true. Two things can
at
be
the same
true.
time. Now, Dominican Republic had their own dictatorship, and nobody came to save Dominican Republic. Dominican Republic saved itself. Now, Cuba, when they wanted to get rid of Batista, Fidel was helped by Dominican Republic. One thing is you receiving help from your Latino countries, and one thing is you receiving help from an oppressive country like the United States under the leadership of someone that has no loyalty to any type of agreement.
His only loyalty is to himself. I mean, let's
Correct.
be
So
honest,
when
let's
people
be
say if you're
real.
not Venezuelan, so when people say you're not Venezuelan, don't talk about Venezuela if you're not Venezuelan because I'll give up the oil for my freedom. That is your right and your choice, and I would have to respect that because you're right. I live under a very privileged system. I wake up and I don't have to deal with Maduro. However, in 3 years, maybe less, when that Venezuelan has no oil and is also under a different type of dictatorship, I don't want to hear no crying.
I think
Because you can
I
be, because you can be, man, I understand. You can be oppressed to the point where you're like, just take it on, give me my freedom. But what you're not understanding is that you're intertwining, you're exchanging one oppression for the other.
Well, I think also
And
it's not like the US has a very established history of meddling in affairs, not only in Latin America, but across the world. Having covert, doing covert CIA type of operations to start a quote unquote revolution that they want. Um, there's similar things apparently happening in Mexico with Claudia Sheinbaum, with people like with uh not people who are actually want her out, but people being paid by people in the US. I there's a lot to that. I'm not going to get into that because I would need more, like I would need to go more into depth to it.
more
But
details, more facts, yeah.
yeah, but um you know, I think that yes, I am happy for the Venezuelan people that they are no longer living under Maduro. However, they are still living under the Maduro regime because his vice president, who is very faithful to him, is now the president of the country, and who is very faithful to how he ran the country. So I haven't heard, and I don't want to pretend that I've heard a lot from Venezuelans in regards to that. If they're okay in
The reason
regards
I've
to
heard that is
that.
because the reason I've heard that is because we in Dominican Republic have a lot of a huge immigration of Venezuelans in Dominican Republic right now. So the Venezuelans in our country who seek asylum in our country are very happy of the fact that the Dominican Republic stepped in and said, okay, use our borders so that you can piggy off back the Dominican Republic should have had better access to Venezuela from our country to then do all this, give me your oil, give me your petroleum type of stuff. The Dominican Republic is very happy for Venezuela, for Venezuelans who are no longer under Maduro. That's where that information comes from. Where I have heard Venezuelans and Dominican Republic say, it's our petroleum. We could do whatever we want. That's fine. But you're also in a country that has companies like Barrick Gold that are taking over Dominican Republic. I'm a nationalist. I am
Yeah.
never going to be okay with the United States having the clause in any country. As a
No,
politician, as a political
I
scientist,
understand
you
what
always
you're
you
saying.
should you
My
always have
thing
to
was,
advocate for sovereignty.
yeah,
You always have to advocate for sovereignty.
yeah, I totally
Always.
understand what you're saying. My thing is like I said, I haven't heard a lot I haven't seen a lot from Venezuelans in regards to what happens now, like what they want to happen now. I've heard a lot in regards to they're happy that Maduro is out and everything. I haven't heard a lot in regards to
I
what they
have.
think of the new
Yeah.
president, who is still technically the Maduro regime. And then, um, everything happened with the Nobel. Oh, there's so many layers and layers
As a
and layers
political
and layers,
scientist, I
and
just want people to understand.
I'm not personally the person because I don't have intimate
You don't
knowledge
have first
of
hand,
that
yeah.
history. So
Hmm.
I'm not qualified. So I don't want to be like, oh, that's why I was just saying, like, yes, I'm happy for them. I'm also scared for them because of the Cheeto, because of Trump, because I think he's a freaking, like, he is just,
Let me
again,
say this.
his
I don't
only
want people
loyalty is to himself. And I'm
I
scared
don't want
for
people to
those
think that
people.
I don't want people to think that I'm pro communism or pro anything. As a political scientist, we take a vow to be objective, right? The minute a politician or the minute a political scientist takes a side, like I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican, you lose all objectivity because you're not going by the law. You're not going by what's best for the people. What history has proven that is best for the people in any living country is sovereignty. When we talk about sovereignty, we talk about full independence. Whether that country is a communist country, a communist democratic capitalist country like China, doesn't matter what country it is. A political scientist also is required through training to compare governments. So part of our training is to compare a communist country to a capitalist country, to compare a socialist country, which is not a communist country, to a democratic country. So when studying those systems, you have to then say, okay, but is this country sovereign? Does this country run by itself? Is this country being oppressed by another country? Is this country fully reliable on another country for it to run on its own system? So when I look at that and I look at Dominican Republic and how it's having all these, American countries, companies there, and they sell it with, I want to give Dominicans an opportunity to make money. Of, or when you look at Puerto Rico, who is a state, who's not really a state, and it's in the battle of fighting for its statehood because it's in the middle. It doesn't know what it can do to survive, and they have these blackouts, and they can't live off of anything. They can't see. It takes Bad Bunny and artists to bring money into Puerto Rico to do all these things. There is no way that in 2025 anyone can say, objectively speaking, that America being in their country does not lead to a lack of sovereignty. Is what I'm trying to say. And
Right.
when you look at
No,
it
I get that now.
from
Thank
you
you for
know, and
clarifying because I think it was getting, I'm not gonna lie, I think it was getting a little muddy in there. So we need to just
no,
clarify it a little bit.
yeah, and I knew that because I saw it. I was like, wait, people are not understanding me. I have to find a way to explain it. So whenever you have another country involved in another country's sustenance or in another country's well-being, and it's not running independently, you also run the risk of that country becoming oppressed by another country. And that oppression is what lacks sovereignty. Sovereignty is a country runs by itself. It says what it's going to do, you know. And that's the risk of that's the big cuco, let's say, of Trump being in Venezuela, Trump using the Dominican Republic, Trump messing up Puerto Rico or not messing up Puerto Rico, Trump with Ukraine. Like when you look at these different countries and you see the influence, or we went into Iraq or to Afghanistan because of weapon mass destruction, but then when we left, the whole
No
country was
weapons of mass
deregulated.
destruction. So let me ask you
And there
one
was
thing before.
no sovereignty. There was no
Yeah.
sovereignty because they couldn't sustain themselves.
Well, when something happens, it creates a vacuum, right? Who's going to fill that vacuum and how that vacuum is going to be filled. So I think that um yeah, I think that that's why I said like I am happy for the people of Venezuela that they're no longer under Maduro, but I'm also scared for the people of Venezuela because Trump says that he's in charge right now, and it's things are not going well in our country because I think that so there's been this thing, right? And I think so many of us can agree, whether you're right or left, that if you're in this country, regardless if you're a citizen or not, we don't want violent people, right? Violent people should go to jail. Violent, like they should have their penance. I get that. Like I think so many of us agree on that. But it went from violent people to, I mean, it all started in 2015, coming down that escalator saying Mexicans are rapists and criminals and not sending their best and blah, 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 blah. And that's all it took for me. I was like, no, I won't ever vote for this man. But there was something in the way that and I think you nailed it a little bit earlier, as they say, when it comes to messaging, that's the only place where he is brilliant, is because he says things over and over and over again that it penetrates the brain, right? He says things over and over and over and over again. And somehow, somewhere, there's a lot of people that within our communities and within Black and brown communities and Asian communities, and that there are some people who want to see themselves so much not othered that they join, or that they see something, they think they're not going to be othered if they help this other, the side that's perpetuating these negative
And
narratives.
in that they fail to realize the old adage that says if they do it to you, they do it to someone else, they're gonna do it to you.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you recently saw, there was a police officer, a law enforcement officer in Minnesota who was actually pulled over by ICE, and she was like, I'm a US citizen, I'm da 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 da, and they were like, no, we need to see your pay. She pulls her phone out, they smack the phone out of her hand. I'll have to find the link to the video or the article. And they smack the phone out of her hand, they start yelling at her, and finally, like, she's like, I'm a law enforcement officer. I guess that at some point she finally was able to prove it. And they like literally scatter like little, ratones. They're just like, ooh. But that's the thing, is it does not matter what position you hold, because there's somebody who's not going to know you, right? I like, in my head the other day, I was thinking, oh man, I wish Clarence Thomas got pulled over and nobody recognized him and treated him the way that other people are being treated. And then all of a sudden he's gonna be like, this shouldn't happen to me, because in his head, he is white. He is a white man in his head, right? Like, he does everything to not protect,
But where
the
does that
BIPOC
come from? Which is
community.
where, but where does that come from? That lack of identity. Going back to that, your example right now is a lack of identity, not because he wasn't other, because along the lines of his education and his early childhood, going back to this is the driving point. If I tell my daughter from here now, you are Latina, you are powerful, you are this, you are that. You can speak Spanish and speak this. In fact, learn Mandarin because the Chinese are going to run everything. Do this, do that. Or if you tell your child, no, play it safe. No, play it safe. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but it goes back to early childhood. It goes back to when do you learn to identify yourself? When do you choose that identity? And when do you choose to disassociate yourself? Whether it's because you have a fear of being othered, whether because you saw that they treat black people that fall in line better in Clarence Thomas's case.
Well, in his case,
Um,
apparently it was because people assumed he couldn't get to where he got because he was black. And that pissed him off. And and I'm sure there was earlier things, but
yeah,
that
but
was
look,
like that was definitely a major thing that's been written
but
about
that's
in
weird
regards to
because
his.
in spite of me being black, I became this, but I'm not black because I'm a different kind of black.
Yeah. No, I mean,
It's a little, you know what I mean?
I
So
get it.
if
I
that is
get it.
true,
It's something that
if
we,
that's
I
true,
unfortunately, here's the thing. Unfortunately, that's not something that we would ever understand, because our brain does not think like
no,
that, right? We'll never understand
no.
certain people who are going to think a certain way, or experiences that they had that made something switch in their head. We're never going to understand that, because that's not how we think. But I think the biggest thing is being aware of it, right? When you talk to somebody or see somebody, and being able, I think, as much as we want to yell and scream, being able to, like I said, I don't think we'll be able to figure it out, but being able to maybe ask the right questions, or it's so hard right now, because I feel like before we used to be able to have conversation, right? And ask questions and have like a back and
I
forth. I mean,
disagree.
I lived
I
in
disagree. Like
Dallas. Yeah, I lived in Dallas for 15 damn
I can
years.
disagree.
Believe me,
I
I
work
had
for
a
law firms.
Republican people.
Let me tell you, I work for law firms in the United States in New York City where there's Wall Street. 80% of Wall Street is GOP. And I look the way they look and I do their jobs. And they look at me and they say I can't do this without Des, right? And they still vote. And I know GOP members that have daughters and still voted for this man. You understand? Yes, we're never going to understand that. But as far as speaking directly to the Latino community, in early childhood is where we define this identity.
Yeah.
Just like these kids in the Middle East when they get bombed, nobody tells them to hate the United States. They know it killed their mom. Liam, with
Oh,
Liam, boy, Liam, that can go either way. He can go be in so much fear that he never wants to step foot in this country after all this is done. And he never, and you don't know if he's gonna bleach his skin because he's so afraid of being categorized a Latino because of where he lived, or that's gonna embolden him to say, "I'm Latino," and because I was able to put up with that, I can deal with anything, and from now on, I don't care. You don't know where that's gonna go,
yeah.
but it does start in early childhood. It does start in what you see. Now,
It starts in what you
I just
see, how you're treated, and how you're how you're the not just your parents, but the people around
which is
you.
why I'm so optimistic about about the next generation, because they cannot say, I don't know what happened. We were raised under the generation of, well, this country's really not racist because we just don't know, right? There was an ambiguity. I thank Trump for the fact that he lifted that and said, no, we're racist. I'm the face of racism. People
Mhm.
paid money for me to be there so I can lift this veil.
Yeah.
Whether that's true America, that's not true America. I think true America is the beautiful, um, it's encompassed by the beautiful message in the Statue of Liberty. Give me, you're tired, you're free, you're poor. I think America is a melting pot, and I think we're great because of that melting pot. But the narrative that they're driving through is that America is racist. Let's make America great again. Let's go back to the 1950s where there's, colored bathrooms and white people bathrooms. That's America's great. So there is an existence of that. For a very long period of time, we were told that that didn't exist, that we just needed to assimilate. I am
Yeah.
so optimistic about the Latinos that are coming up now. The generation between 18 and 25, they can't say that they don't know that this country is racist. They cannot say that they don't know that their privilege, that they don't have the privilege to not go vote. We had the privilege. Some of us didn't have the privilege not to go vote in the 2000s. I'm not gonna vote. Why am I gonna vote? I don't care. It's the Democrats are gonna win anyway. It's in the bag. Or the Republicans are gonna win anyway. No. Now there is no ambiguity. So the next generation of Latinos need to know that yes, you are Latino. Don't vote against party lines. Don't vote against Latinos. The last time the Latinos thought that a white savior was gonna come, we got fucked over. We got deported. We got criminalized. We got killed. I am so optimistic for the future because of what we're living now. You understand? When you look at Latin American countries, when you look at countries all over the world that have had a dictatorship, it's like they're getting their period. It's a coming of age story. And there's never a dictatorship again. Look at España with Franco, never a dictatorship. Look at the Dominican Republic. There was never a dictatorship after Trujillo. And those countries didn't go far. They were very conservative. And then they fell into a dictatorship. The United States has been liberal by the international standards of the world, liberal, where a woman can vote, a woman can read, where gays can marry, and all this stuff. We've been liberal. We've been upholding freedom as the
But we just
reason
have
why
to
we go.
remember that a lot of these things are still very recent, right? Like
Yes,
gay
but even
marriage is
before
still
that,
is still very recent.
but we
Women
but we were
couldn't even
still,
have their own credit card until the
but
70s.
we
Like
know,
there's still
but
things that
we know that, but there's still countries out there that don't even have that. So we are still a symbol of freedom that's not all over the world, which is why we can say that when we go into another country and we're liberating them, is
yeah.
because we are
Can't
somewhat
say that
free.
anymore because nobody
No,
looks
we
at us as
can't.
free. Nobody
But
looks
go,
at us as a free country anymore.
and why is that? Because Latinos went against Latinos, again to the optimism of this will never happen again to us. And also, whatever this dictatorship is, I'm telling you as a political analyst, because we've been such a liberal country, to go from being liberal to a dictatorship is such a big leap that it cannot survive for like 30 years of Franco or 30 years of Trujillo.
Yeah. I agree
So I
with you
want to
there.
give
I think
people,
that I will say this. I will think that he's like this really unique, albeit disgusting individual that captured something. I do agree that he lifted the veil in regards to um racism, misogyny, xenophobia that people were hiding behind that finally were like, yeah,
Sex
like
rings,
they
child
fully embraced
pedophilia.
it and everything. I also think that the people that are top in the GOP right now, they don't have that charisma to maintain what he's captured. Um, and all,
And one
but
thing that
we
they're
do
not going to
have
have,
to, uh,
and the one thing that these GOP members are not going to have ever again is the Latino vote.
I think they're gonna, yeah, I don't think they'll have it in a majority, but they're definitely still gonna have some because some will continue
I
to.
think, no, I think with the $1 billion that they just gave ICE, ICE is going to be in your face. The
No,
reason
girl,
why
there's
that
still some that are like, I mean, I still see it. There's still some who are like, yeah, who are gung ho.
until it not no until it affects them, and it will, because
Exactly.
here's here's what I'm
Exactly.
going to tell you. As scary, and this is where you're going to be like, I don't know, you might have to cut this one out, but this is real. It's not a matter of who is going to be approached by ICE.
When?
It's when. I don't panic. I prepare. How am I preparing? I am doing a will for my child in case anything happens to me. I am buying those trackers, those safety trackers on my feet. I'm putting it in every pair of shoes. So if I am taken, because you're not being asked, you're not being deported, you're being taken, right? So if I am taken, someone in my family will know how to track me. And I will make sure that I put it in a place where it can't be removed. Okay? Scary? Yeah. But we don't know how long this is gonna last, and we don't know where this is going. They just got $1 billion, which means more troops on the ground, more confrontations, more exposure to these people. So these people that are not falling in line with being Latino and with not never voting against Latinos again, up until this happens. I have cousins that are white passing. My cousin just recently went to buy a battery or somewhere. He met with a racist in the store. The racist went on because he had a Dominican shirt. I was the one to tell his wife, tell him to dress like a redneck. You guys are passing. You guys can pass. Avoid that. Be safe. Because you're parents now. Be safe. Plan. Don't panic. Now,
Eh,
God
I
forbid,
want
God
you
forbid it goes
see.
anywhere that far, but
Yeah.
it's better to be safe than sorry.
So I want to go back to, and I'm going to source this in the show notes as well when I was talking about this. So ICE agents drew guns on off-duty officer in Minnesota because they actually had the police chiefs and everything had um a press conference and everything. And so I don't want people to
Hmm.
think, oh, when this happened, I'll source this in there as well. Immigration
Yes.
agents have stopped off-duty officers in Minnesota solely because of their skin. A group of local police chiefs alleged, as concerns grow over handling of immigration enforcement in the state. So, um, he added that police officers fell victim to this while off duty, and that the stops appear to target people of color, which we already knew. So I will make
Hmm.
sure to source this because I want to make sure when we have those sources and we have the thing like it what we're saying
Oh
isn't
yeah, and
just
I'll send
opinion.
you. And
Obviously, we
no,
have
and
opinions, but
no,
that
and I'll
there
send you the
is,
source about the. I'll send you the sources of Dominican Republic being used for Venezuela. I'm going to send you the sources of people actually saying that, you know, don't talk to me about the petroleum, is our petroleum. I'll send you all my sources so that you pick and choose what you want to, outsource as well, because neither do I want to come across as someone that's just preaching. These are actually based on stuff that can be sourced out that you can
yeah,
put
and I
links
think
to.
that's important because I feel like we don't hear that. People just come and give their opinions. And look, everybody has an opinion, and that's great. But I think we also need to differentiate opinion from fact. And these are things that are actually
Yes,
going on and that we
absolutely.
actually need to be prepared for. And girl, like, thank you so much.
Sorry.
If people want to follow
I
you, are
apologize. Like
these,
I said, no,
huh?
you could just follow me. You could just follow me on Instagram. My tag is Maddie Des, like seen here in the Zoom. Um, my stories is where I share most of the information that I find and that I follow, and it's legit. I don't just because there's so much stuff that you can throw out as stories that you don't know if it's legit. But everything is usually either tracked by CNN or something like that, so they can follow my stories. And the reason I don't put it on my page and I put it on my stories because stories delete in 24 hours. In the same reason you gotta be safe, you gotta
Yeah.
plan. You can't panic. You can't have in a way you gotta speak about it, but you can't pigeon yourself to something that can be trackable because we're in danger. Let's be real. There
Yeah.
is a danger to this new reality. Poor Liam didn't wake up that morning thinking he was going to face that.
I know,
And I
poor
think
soul.
I think that in every life situation, if it doesn't affect you personally, you don't really feel it. Like if someone in your family doesn't have cancer, you don't feel it. And I think we don't have that luxury here.
You're right.
In this situation, we do not, as scary as it may sound, I don't want people to panic. I want people to be prepared. And because it hasn't happened to me, doesn't mean that it might not happen. We don't have the luxury to live like that anymore.
Okay, there's a
We,
couple of
you
things.
know,
You said that you have made sure you have a will, you make sure you would have a tracker. What are a couple other things that people can be prepared for in case? Look, the other thing is we shouldn't live in fear, right? We can't live in fear. We can't be
no,
locked up, but you, like you said,
no.
you can be
If you are
prepared. You
approached,
can,
maintain a docile manner because they're just asking you questions, right? Don't panic. Answer the questions peacefully. If there is aggression, don't be the aggressor. You know, make sure that your phone is always fully charged so that if there's a way that you can make a call, you make a call. These little things are a matter of life and death, believe it or not. Just like you're traveling all over because no place is safe now. But that doesn't mean that we cannot be safe. We can be safe. And again, if there is a lasting impression that I want people to know is that I am very, regardless of how dark it may seem now, we have a very optimistic future ahead of us because of what we're living, because this will not be erased, because we cannot deny what we are presently living. Someone can tell me in the 60s I went through this. Nobody can say I didn't live through this. Nobody can say I didn't go through this. Nobody can play with their freedom and their privileges anymore. And I think as a nation, we're going to come across even better if we stick together and if we really don't grow amnesia. Like you see 9/11, New York, we were devastated. New York will never forget 9/11. New Yorkers will never forget 9/11. The United States in general, it doesn't matter where state you're in, you will not forget ICE. You
if
will
you
not
were
forget.
old enough that day, you remember exactly what you were doing, exactly where you were. I was
Liam is
there.
5 years old.
Huh?
He will never forget.
No.
Liam is 5 years old. He will never forget. So it doesn't matter how old or how young you are. And
Yeah. No, we need to
um,
keep saying his name because it's ridiculous of like it's just heartbreaking of what's happening. Desiree,
I
girl,
pray for
thank
him every
you.
night.
Thank
And
you
no,
so much.
thank you for driving it back because let me tell you, it takes uh, a person with a lot of skill to be able to navigate these conversations and bring them back to the main points and keeping it legit and keeping it factual. Not a lot of podcasts do that because it's very hard because everybody's passionate about what's being spoken about. And I think you did a great job. And thank you for creating this space where these conversations amongst women can happen and can happen transparently without somebody saying, "Oh, she's just a crazy lady," or she's jumping to conclusions. No, let's have these conversations because no matter how far fetched they may or may not seem, no matter whether there is resourced right now, somebody listened to something you said today or something I said and like, I'm gonna go Google that. Good. Go Google that. Take the time to go prove me wrong. Go. Because
Yeah.
in doing so, I'm guaranteeing you that you're gonna further your education about the status quo right now. I
Yeah.
guarantee you,
That's what's needed.
you will go Google. So I don't take my word for it. By all means, to your audience out there, go Google. That's the first step. Go investigate. Go to CNN. Go look at these transcripts. Go. because that way you're more educated and more informed. And if you're more informed, you can plan better and you don't panic.
There you go.
So,
Plan, don't panic. Be
all
prepared.
right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And until next time, mi gente.
Hola, mi gente. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Wine and Chisme podcast. If you would like to hear more wine and more chisme, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Saludos.